Here. You didn't show me.
I clicked on it. I just clicked on it, Sam.
And Lois? Lois?
Yes. Hi, Sam.
How you doing?
Yes.
Is Rabbi
Good, how are
having class today?
I think so. I am not certain. I'm just going to
Okay.
wait a few minutes. I'm going to wait a few minutes and see. Okay.
Okay, good. How's everything? What about the doctor, Sheriff?
I'm sorry. What did you say?
No, you said, how you doing?
Oh, pretty good. I'm taking care of a very elderly aunt who's having some problems, so it's up and down, So
Oh, sorry.
anyway, it's only 11:01. We'll give him at least a couple more minutes and then.
It's like in college, you wait 5 minutes for a TA, 10 minutes for
Yep.
an associate
And then-
professor, 15 minutes for a full professor, and then you're gone.
That's, I actually, yeah, that's right. It wasn't 20 minutes for a full professor.
Maybe I just made up the numbers now because I couldn't remember what they were. But I know there was a waiting time that you would have. that you did, and it increased based on their seniority.
Yep.
How old is the aunt?
Believe it or not, she's going to be 102 January 5th.
Oh my God. My God.
Yep.
That's your aunt?
Yes. My father's sister.
102?
Yep.
Is she mentally with it?
She was until very recently. She still kind of is, but in and out. I think the
Wow.
rabbi has joined us. Somebody is.
Oh, wait, am I
Yes.
not? You can't see me?
I can see. Hi, Rabbi. Hi, good
Hi.
morning.
Hi, I can't see you, Lois, but you can see me. Seems unfair.
You can hear me. You can hear me.
We're talking about her aunt, Rabbi, who's 102.
Yes, January.
Both Lois and David have these super agers on their family, which
Each on one
bodes well.
side. Yeah, each on one side. The other was, yeah. What? We'll see.
Yes.
Wow.
It is good to hear your voice. Sam, it's also good to hear your voice. So neither Lois or Sam were with us when I read this, when we did this part from last time. But what we were reading about were the positive commandments, mitzvos aseh shazman grama. So it's time-bound, they're time-bound positive commandments. And I was reading to you from something from Virtual Beit Midrash. We are going to look at it, but we're going to look at the end. But when we get there, I might just review just a little bit of it. The reason we're talking about it is because we were in the first couple of the mitzvot in Sefer Mitzvot, like within the first 10, there were already a couple mitzvot where the Rambam said that they do not, hi Estelle, where the Rambam said that they do not apply to women because they are positive. Hi. So they're like tefillin. Tefillin are positive time-bound mitzvot. We said the Shema also, the Rambam mentioned something about the teaching of Torah being in there, and women are not obliged in the mitzvah of the teaching of Torah. So that is another reason why they wouldn't. But also the Shema is a time-bound mitzvah. Anyway, so we were looking at the subject of time-bound mitzvot because all right, let me just take this for 1 second, if you don't mind. Hello? Yes.
Hi, this is Bruce Marshall. I don't know. Remember me from
Sure.
company?
Sure.
Yes. I didn't know if you got my message yesterday.
No, I did not.
Oh, okay. My wife passed away yesterday.
Oh, I'm
Suddenly.
so sorry. I'm
Yeah.
so sorry.
Yeah. And I know that to deal with her, my daughter's
Yes.
and we were acquaintances. I don't know if she knew my wife. I don't know if she was coming at that time, but I don't have a rabbi to help us with the service.
So when is the service?
Well, I'm at Jewish funeral, start Jewish funerals now. So we're wanting to touch base with you to see when you might be available. So maybe on the schedule. We're thinking maybe at 11 tomorrow.
I repeat that my wife hasn't been doing we have something with her at 11. I would never want to impose on you. For so I could do yes, yeah. I could do 1 o'clock. How about 1 o'clock? I'm so sorry. I'm sorry you're dealing with this. Yeah, and I'm sorry that you're having to deal with this, with all this going on.
Yeah, I was really, well, I'm going to a young Israel now. Rabbi Rambam is capable.
So I want to help in any way I can. I'm very sorry about that.
Yeah, she's talking to the, probably going back her.
Sure.
She's got them on the phone.
Okay.
So sorry.
Yeah.
She was a wonderful person, and she's, she was very excited. I love her.
Right. I'm sure she'll come. I'm sure she'll come.
No, I mean, it's just, yeah, if she's not doing life.
Yeah. Okay, so then I'm also obviously going to want to.
Yeah. Okay. I can do that. Where are you teaching her?
So I'm in Northbrook.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Where do you live?
I am Northbrook. That means that it does make a difference.
I live just on Keystone.
Oh, okay. So you come to your house.
No, I'll come to you.
Okay. Well, we're fine.
Okay, and where?
So is that Chicago funerals?
And that's
It's Skokie.
sure. Okay. Yeah. Okay. All right. And I'm.
So what time would be good for me to feed you?
So. Is it possible to buy today?
Yeah, that's great.
Okay, so this.
It's a 555.
Yeah, if you text me. And I'm so sorry. I'm sorry.
It's wonderful that you're. I really appreciate it.
Of course. All right.
Okay, I'll text you the address.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
I'm sorry. Somebody's wife passed away. I mean, I'm
Were-
sorry.
Were you
Yeah.
talking to the actual husband of the person?
Yes.
Wow.
And it was
Wow.
out of nowhere. It's completely out of nowhere.
Wow.
He just doesn't have, his rabbi is not physically or emotionally well right now. So that was completely out of nowhere. And I'm sorry that happened. It's just that he himself is, I'm not going to tell him to.
No, of
Yeah.
course.
And then the problem is they want to schedule the funeral and my wife has an appointment and I'm having to tell him this man's wife just died. And I'm going to tell him, my schedule. I'm so embarrassed. I just, gosh, all right, whatever.
Are you the rabbi?
No, I mean, but my wife is friendly with his daughter and his rabbi's not doing well and he couldn't think of anybody. And I of course would want to help him. But like this is like one of these appointments. It's like a 3 months waiting for an appointment, for my wife or somebody. Gosh, this is so embarrassing. All right. So yes, last time we went through this, but okay. So this was about
I got it.
right. This was about
I'm gonna
that
call.
Who?
Norma. She's called me.
Why? Why has she called you?
All right. All right. So last time we were talking about women in time-bound mitzvahs, and we were reading from this article by Lori Novick, which again is on the virtual Beit Midrash site. And it has been reviewed by these rabbis, so it's considered, to be rigorous. So she identified this rule, which is that women are not obliged in time-bound mitzvot, time-bound positive mitzvot, as of biblical origin. Now, when we say biblical origin, we do not necessarily mean that you would find it actually written in the Torah. It's not actually written in the Torah. It means that it can be derived using methodology, the kind of methodology we use when we apply certain mechanisms to verses, and the result is a law. So we sometimes call that midrash. That's usually what we call it, midrash. And this is the application of a mechanism to a verse in order to extract law. So the result is this principle that women are not obliged in positive time-bound commandments. That is not to say they never are, but they like often aren't. She even quoted a Gemara, which in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, that you can't use this rule in every case. This is a rule that, in other words, this is, instead of calling it a rule, it's better to call it something that generally applies. Because Rabbi Yochanan said this isn't even like, it's not a hard, fast rule. There's exceptions. So, but anyways, it only, she said, really affects about 8 mitzvot. But those 8 mitzvot are themselves kind of signature mitzvot. They tend to be mitzvot that are involved in public celebration. So, for instance, technically, a woman is not obliged to hear the shofar blowing. Women often make an effort to hear the shofar blowing, but technically a woman is not obliged to hear the shofar blowing. Technically, a woman is not obliged to sit in the sukkah or to shake the 4 species. Technically, a woman is not obliged. So even though, again, women may do that and might even be encouraged to do it, but they're technically not obliged. And since these tend to be mitzvot that are very public and symbolic, you get the impression that that this really affects a lot of mitzvah observance. And in truth, she was pointing out, it doesn't really, there are many mitzvot, and we're going to be covering them, that this doesn't affect any of the negative commandments. Women are obliged in all the negative commandments and almost every positive commandment. So far, of the positive commandments we've written, they've been obliged in every one except Tefillin and the Shema so far, right? And the mitzvah of learning Torah. But we're going to be going through 613 mitzvahs, 248 positive commandments, and 240 of them women are going to be obliged in, or whatever, 238 women are going to be obliged in. And they are very often the mitzvot that take up much of our time and energy. Even the mitzvah of Torah study, if you when we talk about women not being technically obliged in Torah study, what we mean is a daily regimen of Torah study. But clearly they have to have Torah study because there are so many mitzvot which require learning in order to be able to do them properly. So so certainly women are going to be engaged in Torah study, but this would mean, not being engaged in a regular ritual, a daily ritual of Torah study. We also talked about how there is a difference of opinion as to whether women should be encouraged to do some of these mitzvot that they are not obliged in, right? Did we? And we saw that here, it was Rav Yisrael Gustman, who was the, blessed memory, he was the Rabbi Francis went to his yeshiva in Israel, and he was this incredible scholar. He used to give these intense weekly lectures that several Israeli Supreme Court justices used to attend. It was quite something. Anyways, the quote here was, "In my humble opinion, it seems warranted to rule that even in positive time-bound commandments, it is not worthy for women to free themselves from these mitzvot, if not for some other mitzvah whose time is passing because of excessive effort." Rav Gustman accepts the across-board exemption, but seeks to minimize its effects on women who are at greater liberty. To Rav Gustman, women really should perform positive time-bound commandments unless there are conflicts or other significant concerns. So, because the question came up, let's say, okay, whatever the rationale, we saw several rationales for why. Again, it doesn't begin with the rationale for why women would be exempt from time-bound, positive time-bound commandments. It just says it. Again, and then looking back, there are different rationales given. One was that a woman is meant to be at the service of her husband, and how can she be at the service of her husband if she's engaged in these these positive time-bound commandments? So therefore, God, as it were, gives up on his honor so that a wife can honor her husband. That was the Avudraham. And then we saw I think Rav Shimshon Fal Hirsch, Avudraham is writing like in I think they said the 14th century. Rav Shimshon Fal Hirsch is writing in the 1800s, 19th century. And he's the one who suggests that because she's responsible for the household. And again, these are rationales that are being given after the fact. And so his suggestion is that it's not so much the husband, but the household in general, that the woman is responsible for, and how is she going to be able to maintain all the details of the household if she's responsible for some of these mitzvot. But then the question was, fine, whatever your rationales are, they explain what maybe a wife or a mother, but what if somebody's not a wife or a mother? Or what if they're at a stage of marriage where there isn't as much to be done for the husband, and there's not as much to be done for the family, and she has lots of free time. So what do you do then? So you see from Rav Gustman, he is suggesting that you're right. In those times, a woman should engage in those positive time-bound commandments. Again, in one of the rationales that we saw, it was suggested that because men are involved in the working world, they require extra inspiration and disciplined rituals to protect them from the influences of the outside working world. But since women typically, stereotypically, were not involved in the outside working world, they didn't require the same degree of disciplined ritual that men do. So a lot of these disciplined rituals, they're not obliged in because they don't need it. So again, what if you had a woman who was nowadays involved in it? So you could see the limitation of these rationales. They are not covering every scenario. And this is, by the way, the case with rationales. Rationales do not tend to cover every detail. Yeah, so it's not surprising that these rationales are not covering everyone, because almost every rationale after the fact suffers from this problem. It's just unfortunate that we have rationales that don't cover as much ground as you hoped for a subject that seems to be as important as this. Also, there is this discussion about rabbinic law. What if you have rabbinic time-bound positive commandments, at a rabbinic level? So is the same rule apply that women are not obliged to them? So we saw that Rabbeinu Tam, who was from that first generation of Tosfot, Rashi's grandson, Rabbeinu Tam, he said that the exception does not apply to rabbinic time-bound mitzvot, that women are not exempted from those. They are only exempted from the biblical ones. And we saw that other Tosafot disagreed that the exemption applies even to rabbinic ones. And again, some of those rabbinic ones, like Megillah and the 4 cups of wine at the Seder and Hallel at the Seder, these women are obliged in, even though they are positive time-bound mitzvot. So that was the discussion we had before that we were reading. Then we did one of these appendixes.
Rabbi, sitting in the sukkah seems so weird because your family's there. I mean, what?
Right, but let's say you're. I mean, again, I don't like to dwell on these stereotypes, but you're going to be serving food. You're going to be taking care of. You are. So, are you going to be sitting in the sukkah?
Oh, I see. Dwelling. All right. Whatever.
I agree. I agree with you that the way we experience it now, there isn't really supposed to be a difference. There might be in some, depending on the meal, but there doesn't have to be. Yeah. Again, these are rationales after the fact. They're not, Ramosha Shapiro, bless his memory, once, he said that he once asked Rav Dessler, bless memory, about rationales for mitzvahs. He just said, what good are they? They don't, whatever rationale it is, they don't tend to answer a lot of the details. Like, for instance, tefillin. The general rationale is that they are something you put on your head so that you'll be inspired to direct your thoughts in a particular direction, and you put it near your heart so that you direct your emotions to this subject. Fine, but that doesn't explain why they're black. It doesn't explain why they're square. It doesn't explain why they, it just that. So Rav Dessler said to him, in Hebrew, the term used for rationales for mitzvahs is tameh ha-mitzvos, the ta'am of the mitzvah, which is like the flavor of a mitzvah. He said there never was the expectation that these would cover all the details. Just the hope was that you'd get something, because it's hard for people to do, not to have any anything to hang on to with a. So that's why the people who present these don't feel obliged to fill in all the blanks, because they don't see that as their responsibility. They see their responsibility as to just to give you a flavor for it, so that you have something to connect it to, but not they just don't even feel obliged to answer all those. Sometimes you'll see it and it gets actually annoying when somebody tries to do it, because it sort of undermines the beauty of their beginning. Like they'll start with a kind of very beautiful explanation, and then when they try to answer to resolve the details, after a while you wish they hadn't, because they were doing so good until they started.
Rabbi?
Yeah.
Rabbi, I don't. Did you say that tefillin was a time-bound mitzvah?
Yeah, she says that too here, because tefillin are not done at night, and they're also not done on Shabbos and Yom Tov.
Well, what's
So
an example of it? One that's to me, I would never thought that was time-bound. What I understand what you're saying is, but what's an example of something that's not time-bound? That's not time-bound.
The mitzvah to love God, the mitzvah to be in awe of God, the mitzvah to study Torah, the mitzvah to love your neighbor as your fellow, the mitzvah to give
Okay.
mitzvah to
Because that's all day. You're saying that should be all day long.
or it can happen. It doesn't have to be all day. It just could happen any time of the day. There's not a limit. There's not a time when you don't fulfill it. That's how she, in her original characterization, let's see what it was up here. Here, Zman Grama literally means time causes it. Rambam explains that these obligations apply only at specific times. So, in other words, it only applies at specific times. It doesn't apply at other times. So it doesn't mean you have to do it all the time. It just means that you could do it all the time or at any particular time. It's not it's not a positive commandment that is limited. That, in other words, where we say, well, you're not supposed to do it at this time. So as long as it doesn't have that. She said there's only really 8 out of the 248 positive mitzvot, there's only 8 that actually fit into this category.
Which category?
Time-bound positive mitzvot.
Oh.
There's only 8. Again, they happen to be very noticeable, but there are only 8. Okay, Appendix 2. Are women more religiously enthusiastic than men? What about working women? There is no absolute way to prove or disprove essential gender differences in religious enthusiasm. A recent sociological study of American Jews did find disparity between the genders. Women and girls significantly more engaged, specifically among non-Orthodox denominations in America. The same study, however, attributes gender differences to American sociological norms and not to innate religiosity. Sylvia Barak Fishman and Daniel Palmer, Matrilineal Ascent, Patrilineal Descent. Today, American Jewish boys and men have fewer connections to Jews and Judaism than girls and women in almost every venue and in every age. Gender makes less of a difference among Orthodox Jews. The social capital of men and women within Orthodoxy is equal. American males are less attached to Jewish life, not because men are innately less religious than women in some essential psychological way, but because American culture and society value religious activities and behaviors for women, but devalue them for men. Moreover, those aspects of religion that men are typically more attracted to, namely religious activities, are not regarded as religious by Christian-shaped society that values religious belief over religious behavior. The authors of the study dismissed the idea that men's lesser religious enthusiasm suggests that they are innately less religious. Still, they acknowledge that religious activities like observing positive time-bound mitzvot are aspects of religion that men are typically more attracted to, and that the Orthodox communities that emphasize them for men have more gender balance overall. There is room to interpret this data in a way that supports Rav Hirsch's position, because Rav Hirsch had suggested there were like two things. There was, first of all, there was this problem that being active in the working world made you exposed to things that required more disciplined ritual to sort of counteract. That was one thing. And the other one was that women just tend to be naturally more enthusiastic about observance and have more religious fervor. So that's why she's talking about this study. That anecdotally, many women are hesitant to lay claim to religious advantage rooted in gender, but quick to embrace the idea that women's spirituality and approach to religion take a different tone than men's. In our era, when working women are the norm, Rav Hirsch's second argument that part of men's need for the mitzvot has to do with broader exposure to outside influences is less compelling. If anything, the situation in some kollel communities now is reversed. The men remain safe in the confines of the base medrash, while the women go out and work and face the attendant challenges. For Rav Hirsch, this type of societal shift may be theologically problematic. It's not clear how he would respond to it. Appendix 3, do time-bound mitzvot really take up that much time? Many positive time-bound commandments do not take much time to fulfill. If a woman can perform a time-bound mitzvah quickly, why should it create tension in the home? For example, putting on tzitzis in the morning can be accomplished in seconds. Abu Draham might answer that these mitzvot, such as laying tefillin, do take up more time. Perhaps the rule relates to the whole class of mitzvot in order to prevent confusion. We make exceptions only when warranted by the nature of the mitzvah, not based on how much time it takes. Okay. Do we have to take sides in this discussion? Many women do commit themselves to observing some positive time-bound mitzvahs voluntarily out of a desire to serve God in those ways. Some of these women, though, find that over time, especially with marriage or motherhood, outlooks and priorities change. Husbands do increasingly participate in housekeeping and childcare. Babies do nap. A woman is not necessarily engaged 24/7 in child rearing, but perhaps because of the physicality of pregnancy, the vulnerability of childbirth, the intensity of nursing, women's sense of spirituality can shift at each stage of life. For many women, that personal shift finds expression in a shift in preferred forms of avodat Hashem. Some women find that the above conceptual approaches to the topic helpful and some do not. Some women marry and some do not. Some have children and some do not. Some keep up more mitzvot aseh shazman grama than others. Some change practice and thinking from year to year. Most women appreciate having the flexibility to redefine the relationship to these mitzvot and to God over different stages of life. Again, this was an article written by Lori Novick, who is, it's called Diracha, Women and Mitzvot, and there's a whole series of them here. And this one is Women and Time-Bound Mitzvot. And again, it's at what I do oftentimes is just do like a topic and then do the letters VBM for virtual Beit Midrash, and it'll take me to this site that has all these different articles. And again, her article, the following people had looked over the articles and edited it, so it's gone through some kind of rigorous oversight. So this really does represent a broad spectrum of opinion here. Okay, so that was our little foray into this subject. Obviously, it's a very big subject, and we already sensed that there's lots of different branches that you could take in the discussion of it. Okay, so then we're going to come back to our mitzvot. We're not going to come back to it tomorrow. unfortunately. But I will not be available tomorrow, but I will be available on Wednesday, Be'ezrat Hashem. Okay. Also tomorrow, we're having the chief Sephardic rabbi he's called the senior Sephardic rabbi of the United Kingdom, Rabbi Dweck, his name is Rabbi Yosef Dweck. He's going to be in Northbrook at Darchei Noam at 4:30 p.m. Actually, we're having mincha at 4:10. He's going to speak from 4:30 to 5:15. I think it'd be a fascinating thing. I never really thought about the Sephardic community in the United Kingdom, and that is a problem. I should be thinking about the Sephardic community everywhere, and the fact that it never dawned on me that there would be Sephardic rabbis and a Sephardic community, but there is, and he is the senior Sephardic rabbi there, and so I'm looking forward to meeting him and hearing about him, and you too can do that. At least the local people. Sam will have trouble getting here by that time, but
Be a little hard.
a little bit harder. Okay. All right. Thank you. And thank you for your patience on that phone call. I will see you guys on
Wednesday. Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.